Good afternoon once again. And this briefing today will be on evolving operational roles, how it's changing the roles for ATC here in the tower and the ramp tower as well. And the future of TFDM, how it's going to look, all with all three T's tied together. Okay? My name is Bob Staudenmeyer. We're lucky enough today to have Mike Hopridge here with us. He is the only person that's here from the tower or the ramp that works with the equipment every day. So I'm hoping we can get to ask him a lot of questions. I'm going to ask him a lot here early on, and then hopefully you guys at least get a chance, an opportunity to ask him and or after the briefing, because he's going to be a wealth of knowledge to know for the person that actually is using it day in and day out. Okay? And then also we have Eric Cole, and Eric works on the national TFDM team, right? So we're going to go, my thought process is, we see slides all the time. I'll go to slides when I have to. But my thought process is that we'll talk about maybe what things were like a little bit, what it's like now with, and ask Mike some questions about what it's like now with TFDM, what it was like before that, or ATD-2, I'm sorry, what it was like before that, and then what the future holds under TFDM, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. And Robbie, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and switch to my system over here. So I'm going to actually go ahead and take it real quick first, because we're at a rare opportunity, we haven't seen it all day, where metering is actually on and in use at the ramp. And this is live right now. So up here in the right-hand corner, how I can tell metering is on, if I just walked into work and they made me ramp manager, the things I can tell is that I can see metering is turned on because the runways are in color. If they were both white, that means metering is just set up and on, but not active yet. Now in this case, it is actually active for runway 36 center. So that means that the metering times have hit the threshold of how many minutes of aircraft we have out in the queue. So it's starting to delay aircraft back at the gate. And we can see that and of course, since it is live, I can't zoom in on the aircraft itself. But see how these aircraft right here are blocked in time, and then some other aircraft have times right next to them. They're data blocked, but they're not blocked in. What we started to do here over the past few months is making the system more TFDM-like, and we are freezing the times in advance before the metering, or once the metering has kicked on, we're freezing it in advance. So up to 15 minutes in advance, these times that are blocked in are frozen and in place and are ready to count down. So this aircraft, if it happened to call in right now, my eyes aren't very good, but I think it says 11 minutes. That doesn't mean that it's an 11-minute delay beyond the time it pushed back. That's adding in both the time of where it is currently now, where the EOBT is going to be, and then where the target off block time has been given, okay? So there's a lot of OTs, right? There's a lot of these acronyms. It drives me crazy. So think of EOBT as the reservation you're requesting at a restaurant or something like that. That's the time you want to push back. And now once this metering kicks in, we're given it a time to push back based on all the other aircraft moving around. So back to that one aircraft that was showing the 11, or that's not frozen in place, it's bouncing around there a little bit. Again, that may really only have a 3-minute delay at the gate beyond when it would really want to push back, beyond the EOBT, which is this target off block time that it's issuing. So I just kind of jumped into this real fast, but again, we hadn't seen this all day, so I wanted the opportunity for you folks to see metering on and in effect for a runway, okay? And let's see if I scroll down here to the bottom, on the bottom right, we kind of keep a count over there. So the center runway has roughly 14 aircraft out there moving it around, not all right in the queue, but heading towards that runway, okay? And then the center runway, or the east runway in blue, just has about 4 aircraft out there, And the green arrivals, that number, that's just showing that there's about 13 arrivals within a period of time coming into land. And I think we usually have it set at 10 minutes, but that is adjustable. That's an adjustable feature. And so while we're here on the ramp real quick, I'll just point out a few things. Once again, if I came in and was just taken over and maybe there wasn't anybody to relieve, I would be able to notice that, again, metering was in effect. Looks like we're right in the middle to the back end of a push. Some aircraft have the freeze times. Some aircraft, this one down here by B4 is showing the word push right now, so it's reminding that ramp controller, hey, your delay time's up, push them, let's get going. Whichever ramp controller is working that situation. This one right here has already pushed back, and that's what that engine spool up, kind of cute little engine spool up thing looks like. And this one here with the red box around it is telling me that they have it, the pilot requested to push back, but they have it on hold for one reason or another. And then I can't zoom in since it is live, but right in here in these yellow blocks, that's information like aircraft that are on APREC, that have APREC times. So I would know if I was able to zoom into these, I would see which destination that was and be able to tell which aircraft had times to lose. I'm sorry, had an APREC time. And this aircraft may have already received its APREC time, but we may recommend, once he got his APREC time, if it was a delay into the overhead flow, we're saying, hey, you can still sit here for 11 more minutes, save on that fuel, and you're still going to hit your time out at your release time out at the runway, okay? So we're giving those recommendations, or again, they don't have to take it at the gate, they could take it somewhere else if they want, but the bottom line is that could be 11 minutes of fuel saved and still hit your APREC time. Here's another aircraft. It's in push, and actually they have a hangar designation on it. So sometimes they have to move aircraft around, obviously, to different hangars, maybe for maintenance, whatever the case is. And I see some gray circles and diamonds, and that's telling me information that yes, there's a target there at the gate. There's an aircraft piece of metal there, but it's not really a flight yet, ready to go out and depart. And I can see that we already have 3 people over here in the hard stand. And I can tell from this green arrow of what direction the runway is in use. And then once I wanted to know more information, I would come up here and open up my notifications panel, and it would tell me all the restrictions that are in place. Okay? Just some of the information I can tell here along the way of what's going on here at the ramp. So right now, I'm going to switch over to the tower. We'll have a little fun with Mike here, and just ask Mike the same type of question. If he just walked in right now and they didn't get a briefing yet, what it looks like is going on to him. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, go back to the top real quick.
Sorry.
So if I was just walking in, we're north, beats are on the center runway. They are metering right now, going to 3-6 centers, getting times. It looks like APREC and JFK. Edict's just to Boston, but not APREC, which is good. Atlanta is in full auto mode. Probably, that time is probably a pre-scheduled time, so that wasn't a time that I got. I think it's 20 minutes from the EOBT time is when it sends it to Atlanta, and they send back the time. And it just went to where they went red. So is that leader? The leader line is still orange, so he's still sitting on the gate. So he's close. There's not a whole lot of traffic, so I wouldn't worry about that time just yet. There we go. He just jumped. You can look at these leader lines. These are all out at the runway. So there's about, what, 7 there. There's one taxiing out southwest. What else?
So is that because of various color of the leader lines, right?
Yeah,
yep.
the colors of the leader lines. I can't really see that side very well, but looks like there's a few blue taxiing out over here as well. So yeah. It looks like the end of the push is near. Yeah. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. And then what I wanted to ask you, we had a discussion earlier in the week, Mike, about before you had ATD-2 and the STBO display, how did you go about getting an APREC time, getting a release time. By the way, I guess I should have said last briefing because we threw acronyms around. APREC is approval request. It's like a call for release to get fitted into the overhead flow. So now we can use it automated many a times if the center has the DAC set up. So anyway, before this system, what did you do, and how did you figure out a time?
Yeah, so we didn't have that RTC display. We had an ASDX, and you only see what's out on the taxiway. And it was actually, this system went down the beginning of August, so it was kind of a refresher of how life used to be, and it was not awesome. So a guy calls clearance delivery. Clearance delivery tells me, hey, they said they were about ready to push. They need a time to JFK. Without this system, I just look down at a ramp full of airplanes, and I don't know which aircraft it is. I don't know how much congestion they got to go through. I mean, there's planes all over the ramp. You don't know if they're moving out to the runway he's going to. You don't know if they're going to a different runway. You don't know if they're inbound. You don't know if they're outbound. All of them are green. So to get that time, and if you have to call for that time, I'm not trying to hit that precisely. I'm padding that 10 minutes. So if I think maybe 35 after is about the time, I'm probably going to ask the center for 45. That way it covers any congestion through the ramp. He gets out there plenty of time, because what we don't want to do is call the center back and have to get another time. So we pad that time. But with this system, it's definitely helped us be within a couple minutes of asking. I mean, it's easily knocked it down. I still pad it probably 2-3 minutes, but nowhere near like I used to.
So that's some great time saving right there. You know, that was interesting to hear. And then also, correct me if I'm wrong, but back then, once you had the time, you had no idea if there was room in the overhead flow or anything like that. You probably wouldn't even call back.
Even if they got out there 20 minutes early, you didn't call back. You weren't bothering that center controller or that center TMU to try to get it knocked down. It was just, that was the time. You stage them where you had to stage them, and they went. But now with getting able to see the overhead stream, we're always renegotiating times, and since we're not making that phone call, it's very simple. And then when they put us in this full auto mode, it's even better. So, but the centers are a little bit, especially Washington Center, they're a little bit weary of putting us in full auto. They keep us in this semi-auto, but it sends it to them, and within a few seconds, it dings on their screen over there. Within a few seconds, they get back with us, and I see the time that they should give me, and usually we get it. And I think it's since March, it's been over 200 hours of delays that we've saved from just using the system.
Right, and that's what the color coding's about, right? Trying to stand out to you whether you're on time or early or late, kind of a little reminder maybe to click on the aircraft again to see if there is any other green space you can get earlier, if the aircraft happens to be out there earlier or not. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so maybe we can see a tiny bit better on the data tags and things like that. So, Mike, tell me about what you mentioned also about like the view of the ramp and what you learn from that, what you gain from that, and like when you're working out of the TRACON instead of the tower. Because correct me if I'm wrong, if there's only one TMC, you're down at the TRACON, not up in the tower anyway, right?
Yeah, TRACON is going to get staffed before the tower gets staffed. To be honest, because I'm pretty much always in the TRACON, so this system I think is even better for the TRACON. It's awesome in the tower, but downstairs, the situational awareness this system has given me, before this, you just had to be reactive. The planes hit the airspace, anything coming from the east is going to 3-6 right, anything from the west going to 3-6 left, and that's how it was. And then you see this wave of traffic taxiing out to 3-6 right, and you're like, oh man, hey, arrival control, I need you to change this one, change them in the center runway. And pilots don't like doing that late. Controllers really don't like doing that. With this, you see it happen. This easily gives me 15 to 20 minute lead time from what it used to be. I can see just from this view, and there's it's not on here, but these numbers down here, you'll see them as they start pushing back. Those numbers start ticking up, and you see which runway. So 3-6 center is going to get hit harder than 3-6 right. So in that situation, I'm going to 36 left is arrival only runway, and then we share 36 center, 36 right with arrivals and departures. So, you know, Charlotte isn't fortunate enough like DFW. I mean, DFW has runways everywhere, right? We don't have that. We have to be very, very strategic in our runways in order to be efficient at Charlotte. So this system, no doubt, has made us more efficient. But in this situation, I'm going to try to avoid 3-6 center, even if I had to go normal flow on 3-6 right, not provide gaps. That way, it's 11-2 we're holding right now, but it's about to be 13 planes moving out. And if on the STVO screen, if it were up, you would see with those leader lines exactly where those planes are. Are they on the taxiway? Are they in the ramp? Are they pushing back? Yeah, these right here.
So it looks like whoever the TMC is today is taking your advice. They didn't put anybody on the center.
Yeah, and when they do, these gray ones will jump to the center timeline. That's one thing we had asked NASA to keep all the arrivals off 3-6 center, and then when we assign it downstairs in the TRACON, then it jumps over, so we see it. It's actually what's happening. So it's amazing from a TRACON perspective as far as situational awareness and how flexible I can be downstairs just to help with the departures.
So the one thing I want to add while you're mentioning that is, since part of the title of this is dealing with the 3 Ts and the 3T interactive, is that's exactly what the NASA team did with the arrivals, which are in gray. So the ones close in within the TRACON, Charlotte TRACON agreed to enter the scratch pad entry, right, Mike? They entered the scratch pad entry of which runway they're going to actually send them to. So the ones inside the TRACON, it's an absolute which ones they're going to. The ones kind of in the middle beyond the TRACON and maybe about just roughly an hour back, we're gathering that data. This is all coming from the fuser. We're gathering that data from TBFM because they're on the timeline on TBFM, so we're gathering them off there. And then if we could, again, we can't slide, but if I can scroll down the middle of the timeline, I can look an hour and a half to 2.5 hours out and still see arrivals in the timeline, and they would be beyond maybe the TBFM or still on the ground or whatever when they're proposed to come off the ground. So now we're using the TFMS data. So we're always trying to grab the best source to put them on the timeline of where they're going to be. It's the same thing with the departures going out, the different color coding of the leader lines, the 10 seconds continuous update on the surface system, recognizing where they are now, where they're going to be. And that's how they end up placing them on the timeline, in between the departures in between and things like that.
Yeah. Usually about 15 minutes before every push starts, I set up and I look at the flight plan demand, and I look for that push. I want to see the numbers, and they have a what if system that I can have on the other screen, and I can compare to see how the runway utilization is set up. So it's right now it was beats were on the center, which is one of our southbound departures. So we're trying to put more traffic departing 3-6 center in this situation. There's times when that puts too many planes on 3-6 center, so I can use that what if system. And it's completely offline, and I can go through different runway setups to see what's best for us. And if I like one that's different, I'll talk with the supervisor, hey, this is going to be more efficient for us. What do you think? Yeah, they like it. And then once we make the change, what's beautiful about it is it immediately goes to the ramp, it goes to the controllers, and no coordination had to be made. It's definitely helped our relation with our ramp, because before you had to call them on everything. Hey, take this blue streak to 3-6 left, or this American over to 3-6 center, whatever the case is. And they're busy. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to talk to a busy controller or a busy ramp controller. It's hard to talk to them. They don't necessarily get everything that you ask for. So we would get a lot of planes in the wrong spot back then. But now with this, it's all color coded, so it's kind of, it's made it a lot simpler and improved our relationship.
So basically, with the if you needed to swap some aircraft, then the aircraft data tag would just change the color and tell them which fix and which actual spot to taxi out to, right?
Yeah. And we utilize that a lot. We call it cherry picking, especially when we're south. All these RJs that sit right here, as they push back, you know, let's say this one pushes back. He's brown, so he's supposed to go to 18 center, but push hadn't started yet. I've coordinated with downstairs TMC, and I'm like, hey, if you avoid 18 left, I'm going to front load, and I'm going to cherry pick these guys. So that guy pushes back, and I immediately go on the timeline, change from 18 left. It changes blue. Ramp knows it. My controller knows it, and they send him to the spot right there, and he's gone. Usually we can get about 8 aircraft out like that, and helps the ramp tremendously because this area right here is just traffic jam. One-way traffic jam.
Your AL 716 up there with the green box around it?
Out in there?
Is there a comment in there, or why is that?
The white, it probably says flagship. I think they put that on their heavies.
But yeah, there is a box that allows them to make comments, to put comments into their ramp for their ramp controllers and things like that.
Hover over it and see the comment?
Yeah, we can't do it because it's live, but yeah, they can certainly do that. They can hover over it and see what it says.
I've seen flagship. I've seen DOT critical. I've seen air start. You know, like a lot of stuff that doesn't mean anything to me, but it means something to the ramp. So
Right. So these are things along the way, and this is where we'll start tying Eric in here pretty soon. And once again, we all have to remember that this isn't TFDM, right, Eric? This isn't TFDM. This is an opportunity of what things can look like and the information that can be received for airlines and ramps and you know, the folks that build all this stuff, the Aerobond folks and everybody else, that they can come and say, and hear from Mike and hear from the ramp folks and saying, hey, this is great information that we didn't have before that is really going to be useful to us. And we really would like somebody to set something up like this for us to see.
yeah, this screen, this isn't going to be, you know, air traffic. This is going to be the airlines, and I wish it was going to be air traffic. You know, I don't want to lose this knowledge, you know, with TFDM, but you know, I don't get to make those rules.
Is your Whatif modeling, is that being done both by you and the trade guys and the ramp tower? So like the ramp tower manager could do, say he wanted to do airport purge of all the departures because you were having the arrivals come in for 60 minutes. Maybe you could share that model, that Whatif model back and forth.
I don't know if ramp can do it or not.
Yeah, that was one of the things along the way was that, you know, one or the other could kind of help set it up and, you know, in theory be on the phone, look it over and say, yeah, this is why we're going to go to this configuration because of this reason, the potential to do that. That's correct. Go ahead.
This is a real basic question, but how do you manage this with a flow change? When you time everything so precisely,
Perfect question for Mike.
and then what happens when you get a flow change?
Yeah, like we see it all the time. South restriction, single stream, 15-inch trail, where beats were, you can't see it here, but beats are on the center runway, which is one of our 3 south departures. So I don't want that anymore. So I would just go in, hey, beats are on the center. I could go to the Whatif system and quickly look. I can either put the beats on the center runway, I could put all southbounders on the center runway. I could see what that number gives me. I could go back to just a normal north and see what that number gets me, and I can make the best decision. I can put southbounders here, northbounders here. There's a lot of different tools that I can quickly, within just a few minutes, know the answer to that question. And either way, I'm going to put all southbounders on the same runway, because if not, they're going to go to 2 different departure controllers who's going to get quite angry with you when that happens. So that's I mean, it's within just a few minutes. I know what operation we need to be in.
So it's simply priority management or complicated?
Before that, it was go normal. Just move the beats back to 3-6 right. Oh, if we're talking a runway swap, that's
I'm talking like you were in North Flow conditions or in North Ship, and now you're in South Flow.
south flow.
So you're flipping the airport.
I mean, it really just going to depend on where you are in the push. You don't ever try to flip during the push, so you try to hold out as long as you can. So at that point, yes, I can go into the Whatif system while we're still north and see what I want to have set up for a south operation. Yeah, I can do that, and then when we flip, I can go right to that operation. And again, I don't have to tell the ramp anything because they get it. As soon as I put it in here, the ramp knows it.
So what, let's say it's swap season, which it is. What are some of the things that you used to have to coordinate with the ramp that now you don't as much, and things like that?
Anytime a fix got shut down, Merrills are stopped. Yeah, just have them call clearance delivery for a reroute. We might reroute them north, but they would, and so they should go over here to 18 Center, but a lot of times they'd still come over here because so the ramp, they're still east departures, but now they're really north departures. So you would get north departure sitting here, north departure sitting here, and then it's a 1-for-1 off the airport, not efficient. Now I just go into the TM action and JoJo, stop, CDR, Weasel, and the ramp, everyone that's a JoJo will light up yellow, and it will say basically to the ramp that the CDR is available. Whether we give them a Weasel, whether we give them whatever, we'll give them whatever CDR we think is best for them. But the ramp automatically is going to know that guy needs to call clearance delivery because JoJo stopped, but there's an option. If it were red, JoJo's just stopped, we're waiting out the storm, expect 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. We're not going to reroute these guys because it's going to open up. We're expecting it to open up soon. But I can do all that within seconds and never have to make a phone call.
Bob, do you have the pull-down menu for the ramp that shows the fixes? For the RTC, you know, the departure fixes, the call lead. When it closes one, it puts an X over it, and it can either
Oh.
put the suggested.
Glad you said that, Bernie. Yeah, right down here in the bottom right-hand corner. That, down in the bottom right-hand corner, that is actually part of STBO, but the ramp manager looks at that all the time. They always have that up there, part of the STBO. So if exactly what Mike was just describing, if JoJo was closed, they would see JoJo along the top line in red, and then they would know JoJo's closed, but I don't see it arrowing over anything to tell me that he's going anywhere yet. And then after a little bit, after the, maybe Mike coordinated with the center and to swap JoJo over Queen or something like that, then it would show on there for the ramp manager on the top that JoJo's are going to Queen. So once again, all this information that he doesn't have to guess about, that ramp manager doesn't have to guess about, and he's watching that and knows exactly what's going on. This is, by the way, the configuration that most of the ramp managers at Charlotte watch. Of course, they're watching the ramp display, and they're watching, this is part of STBO also, they're watching the view of, I'll go back over to here. They're watching this just blown out. So they're watching that, and they just unzoom, unzoom, unzoom until they see all the further out, 10 to 15 miles out or whatever the case is, so they can see when some of their flights are coming in and which runway they're landing on and things like that. So they're really well informed about what's coming up next. And this section down here, there is one upper line that where they haven't scrolled up a little bit, so there's one upper line there with the header of all the Bobsy, Weasels, all the different departure fixes that we can't see right now, but it's there, and that's how they know in this next 15-minute increment that 3 aircraft are going out over that fix and things like that. And the STB, that is from the STBO. So let's get Eric involved here. And okay. And this is a great opportunity to hear
Thank you, Mike.
from what things that we've seen and what things we can or cannot expect moving forward in TFDM.
So just first off, the only fundamental differences from TFDM to this is queue length is in number, so like 12 aircraft in queue as opposed to queue length in time, and we're not providing a ramp tool. So when they're showing the ramp side of this, we're not providing that. The good news is that this is NASA's tech transfer. So they're trying to share all of this with you. Now, taking their code, even if they're sharing it with you and building your own tool may be very difficult because this is for Charlotte and you'd have to develop a tool for whatever other airports you wanted. But I would think it would be a good idea to use it as a checklist of things that work here and what do I need. Just give one example, they talked about the priority flags. TFDM, and there will be a big conversation tomorrow about substitution, doesn't provide you with a priority flag, but we've already talked to some vendors and they said we can write the software to make it look like that. That you can flag one aircraft and system will automatically pick the one that you're substituting with. That kind of aspect. Somebody asked about modeling what-if scenarios. TFDM is not going to provide that to the user. That's for the control tower, for the TMU to do what-if scenarios. Through the TTP feed, I think you can see a lot of it. And what kind of what-if scenarios can you do? So you can change the queue length and see what the impact is. There was some talk earlier today about gate contention. The idea for ATD-2 surface metering and TFDM surface metering is not to have a whole bunch of gate contention. Obviously, if you hold a plane on the gate for 10 minutes to save fuel and you have another plane holding 10 minutes on the ramp to get in, you've accomplished nothing. So it's trying to find that sweet spot. So the TMU and the tower will be able to change in the what-if modeling. What if I make my queue length 14 or 16 or 18, and what will that effect be? Or maybe I can bring it down and be more aggressive at this point in time. And they can do that what-if modeling. They can do what-if modeling on closing runways and see what the impact will be if you add a whole bunch of aircraft to it. As Mike was saying, you can do what-if modeling on changing from north to south operation, reference that question. You know, if it's a hard weather front coming through, you're going to have to change no matter what. You're just going to do it. If you have the what-if modeling and you just know the wind's gently going to change from one direction to another during the course of the day, you'll be able with TFDM to say, well, what happens if I do this at 1 o'clock or 1:30 or 2 o'clock and see the impact and make operational decisions with that. So, you know, part of this was roles and responsibilities of different groups. So one of the things when we were talking about the what-if modeling that I think you all need to consider, and my group is Collaborative Site Implementation Team. We'll talk about that more tomorrow with Mike Huffman and Carol Hugel. But we're going out to the 27 sites that are going to get surface metering. And one of the things that we really want to focus on is how unique each airport is. And we're going to bring out user guides and a template of an LOA a year in advance for you to start working out how you want to operate at your individual airport. And since all the airports are different, you might want to say, okay, from all the modeling that we've seen and all the information we have, we want 12 aircraft in line for runway 1, and then when it goes past 14, that's when we'll go into a surface metering program. And we want to lock the TMU and the tower down to always honoring that or just declining that, but having no leeway. But maybe you want to give the TMU at your airport a little more leeway, saying, you know, we trust them, they've made really good decisions in the past, and maybe they can bump it up and down 3 without coordination. The goal from Mike's perspective and from my perspective as a former controller is we don't want to make 500 phone calls a day in order to enact this. We want to be able to coordinate digitally automatically. And so if you set up some of these LOAs and parameters in advance on how you're going to handle your situations, I think it's going to give you a lot of flexibility. Yeah, go, Mike.
So that being said,
Yep.
is there going to be some standardization so that airline A, MBA over here is doing it this way, this entity hired this vendor to do this, where we have 5 different methods to do this, and the FAA and the flight operators are not on one standardized system, because that's what we have, you know, that's our problem today.
Yeah.
And the nice part about this is it is a standard platform because it's the only platform. And I think that's a big problem going forward.
So I can see the point, but when we talk to people, one of the things we started discovering is we want to talk about the educated consumer. Because when you talk to the airport authority in Philadelphia, maybe they don't need a ramp tool as much as you need a ramp tool. They don't need to be able to submit EOBTs because they're not pushing back the international flights. American Airlines is doing that for them there. And they don't necessarily need a tool as advanced as maybe one of the airlines do. So it's really kind of determining what it is that you need as a user. And so one of the things we were talking about earlier, and I thought maybe you could use some clarification, is as a user, are you submitting data? If so, are you submitting EOBTs, tail numbers, gates, and those kind of information, or you're just consuming? So you might have 2 different kinds of tools. At the operations center or the ramp manager might have a tool to submit data, but you, at the ramp level below the wing, Maybe you just need something where they get TOBTs and TMATs. Just something that just gives them the ability to consume information. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, and like Mike said, he doesn't want to pick up the phone. Well, I'm busy events, you need to leave. You need to do the flight operators. But yet, there are critical pieces of data. We call it critical time departure. This flight has to be off by this time, not for an EDCT, but for a crew legality, or for an FAR 117, or for a 3-hour tarmac before I go back to the gate. So there's data sharing that we have to have
Yep.
to streamline, and to streamline that communication, we have to have that, I think, electronically. I think that's the future.
Yep.
But if everybody has their own systems, how do we all connect into one?
So they're going to,
I think that was answered when the CONOP was developed. I don't know if they still focus on the concept of operations from the SCG, but the vision in that group was we're going to set a concept of operations where it's just like the FNCs on the airplanes, different models are out there, but you needed guidelines. So as this goes out and different vendors, I guess for lack of a better word, pick up to develop it, they also need that concept of operation or the final vision of that to make a
yeah, I agree. And I don't disagree with what you're saying, Mike. I think there's a few things like the flight crew timeout that aren't on there that would have been benefited to have them.
Yeah,
And
and set boundaries and guidelines. I don't want
Sure.
you need to, if this crew had 2 more hours, I shouldn't even be talking to you.
yeah.
If they're down within a certain window, yes, we need to, can we resolve this jointly?
Yeah, I think the interesting things though was some of the things that Mike pointed out was with TTP and the way that's going to feed into the tools. You're going to be able to see if a plane is timing out, it's reaching the 3-hour tarmac roll. You'll be able to see that. We'll be able to see that. You'll see if planes have APRECs or edicts, or you'll be able to see if a guy's taxiing out and he's pulled into a holding area. You'll be able to go through the feed and look at your tool and see in 12 minutes he's going to depart off of runway 36. So that kind of information is going to be available to you, and I think that's a huge upgrade over what we have now. Are there a couple of gaps? Yes, but.
So these are the ways that are coming out in advance, would it be a recommendation then to say, to set that criteria so that at a hub where you've got 2 major carriers, saying that, we've got Marriott is able to provide 5 sets of data back to the FAA, but Marriott is able to provide 3. How are you going to, who's going to take more of that data and get more prioritized? Or do you say these LOAs set the data to the standard and that's what we're all going to play on?
So some of that's apples and oranges. So the data elements that you need to submit into the program, the tail number, the gate assignments, the EOBT, that information, the 11 data elements, that's kind of expected of everybody who's playing within the system to make it work. So those aren't really kind of optional. You need to submit that data. When it comes down to the airport itself, what we're talking about with the LOA is how aggressive do I want to be on the TMATs and the surface metering and getting these benefits. One of the things I just want to point out for an aside here, just to remind everybody, it's not a TMI in the sense of a delay. It's just holding your place in line. It's where you choose to be on the taxiway or at the gate, saving fuel, reducing emissions. So I noticed at first, and when they were working at Charlotte's, the average gate hold was like 5.5 minutes, and I can't remember, it was I can't remember the percentage of aircraft, maybe 14%, 17%.
Yeah, it's only probably like 12 to 14.
And then gently increased over time. And at first it's like, oh, they're holding longer at the gate because they learned to trust it and to use it a little bit more, and that it wasn't having a negative impact on their system. I think with the LOAs locally, that's kind of what you're aiming for, to see how much can we tolerate before we're causing ourselves problems, because we're going to get some benefits. One of the things when we were talking to Los Angeles was showing them if they held 1 out of 20 airplanes for 5 minutes, the millions of dollars in fuel savings. And if you think about the course of the day, I'm a ramp manager and I run 240 airplanes, I'm really talking about 12. So I'm holding 12 planes for 5 minutes a day and I'm getting huge savings. I think that you start seeing the benefits there. But those LOAs are focused on what do you want. The FAA is not going to come in and say the queue length here is 12. They're not going to say the lead time's got to be 2 hours out for every airport, and like how far out do you look to see whether or not you want to have a program. Those are going to be variable by site, and that's what's going to be in the LOA, and those are the kind of influences you all are going to have locally when you start setting up your LOAs.
That's exactly what we've noticed here along the way at Charlotte, is that early on, you know, we're keeping high queue lengths. You know, early on it was high queue length until they felt more comfortable with it, and then you know, almost the exact opposite would happen. And said, well, we're only holding them for 2 or 3 minutes. You know, what are we getting out of that? But those 2 or 3 minutes add up. And it took a little while, and so we started showing them the data more and more that those 2 or 3 minutes of savings that you're not burning fuel, et cetera, that are holding up. And some of the ramp managers there that I spoke to will say, because if you really sit there and watch the ramp, a lot of times you'll see all the arrivals waiting until all the departures get out, and then they bring them around in, because of what Mike pointed out, how it's like a one-way area around this section of the ramp at times. So what they found out is, since they are being metered out, and the gates, these corridors here weren't always taken up with everybody pushing back, they could slide a couple of these arrivals in and out amongst the metered aircraft heading out.
So I'm going to answer a couple questions that weren't asked, but anyway. So I think where we are in the life cycle for a lot of the airlines is we're heading towards TFDM. You've onboarded with SWIM. You've started submitting data, EOBTs. Normally that's not a actual EOBT to start with, but it's a substitute value, and then you start refining and get into actual EOBTs, and it's a unique value, and you're trying to make it better. And where you're headed towards next is the development of ramp tools through understanding TTP and TFCS, and policies and procedures that allow your people to interact with the systems. And that's what should be happening in the next 1.5 years or so. The other thing that I was going to talk about was a question that's sometimes asked, but mostly not. Air traffic controllers, so the ground controller at an airport that gets TFDM is not going to enforce TMATs. It's not going to be like an EDICT program or an APREC where I'm trying to hit that 3-minute window. The number one thing for us at an airport is to make sure that we hit the overhead stream times, so we maximize using that capacity. But what they've learned, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, for people that didn't know, the TMAT times are when an aircraft, and again, we can't see it unless they hovered over it, but right in this area, if this aircraft pushes back that had an APREC time, it'll turn to show a TMAT time. In other words, it's trying to tell that ramp controller what time to get to that spot to hand off to the ground controller.
So one of the things I think we can learn from Charlotte reference the TMATs and ground controllers enforcing times or not enforcing times. The paradigm that we got from the concept of operations is the airlines don't want you to over-control their ramps. And because of that, we'll judge ourselves later on. We'll use the data that we get from the operational metrics, and we'll see, did you comply? Are you complying? And then we'll discuss it, and I don't know, public shaming, but we'll try to get everybody on board to participate in a fair manner. One of the data elements that I saw from Charlotte was that they're hitting their APRECs and their EDICTs at such a better rate than pretty much anybody else in the NAS, and much better than they were before by using ATD-2. And that's because the software is helping them get their taxiways organized in a way that when you get to the runway, you're hitting it almost exactly on your EDICT and your APREC. And that makes your life easier. So if I'm a ground controller and I see 3 or 4 aircraft coming by and they have an overhead stream time, and I can trust TFDM and ATD-2 to deliver them the runway at the appropriate time, I'm not punishing an aircraft that wants to taxi out a little bit earlier on a TMAT by making them wait. I'm making them wait to get in queue because I know that I'm going to meet my release times if I do that. So I think by natural course of things that people will end up honoring the TMATs just because it makes their departure sequence work.
The other, I mean, it's still a guess when you're trying to get a time, but it is a much more educated guess because I know where the aircraft is sitting. I know if the aircraft's pushing back. I know how many aircraft are possibly going to be in front of them. I know all that stuff. Without this system, you don't know any of that. You don't see any of the planes in the ramp except with your eyes, and you just don't know which one of those aircraft out there is the one calling you going to JFK. Are they sitting in a spot where they could easily get to the runway, or are they sitting in a spot where it could take them 20 minutes to get to the runway just because of where they're sitting. And with this, I can answer all those questions. Without it, I can't.
You know, and reference that and you know, operational roles, I don't think we can minimize how hugely important pre-scheduling departure releases are and how much fuel savings that they've discovered in Charlotte already. The way it used to work, or the way it still works now, is mostly you have to wait for an aircraft to push before you call for release. And if you're in the Northeast Corridor and you're going to LaGuardia, the first time the pilot finds out that they're going to wait 45 minutes to an hour is after they've pushed their aircraft. That's a really inefficient way to do business. By submitting accurate EOBTs to a system that trusts it and pre-scheduling departure releases and providing that time ahead of time, that allows the aircraft operator to make decisions on whether or not they're going to hold the plane or push the plane and look for some place to park it. But it allows you to make those decisions prior to boarding the aircraft.
So initially when it started at Charlotte, Charlotte went out and the FAA separated aircraft going up to the, and there was always a mileage trail going to the Northeast, going into the New York market, Washington market, all of Boston. So you always had a mileage trail. It's kind of like, I think one analogy someone gave was like going to your favorite restaurant and the place is packed and you wait and if when there's a table open, well, now that we've put ATD-2, you're scheduling to your favorite restaurant. So you get there, not only does the carrier have predictability of when you're getting off the ground, your customers have predictability and the downline stations have predictability that you're going to make a commitment. So NASA has numbers of how much it's reduced out of the way going to the Northeast. The numbers are phenomenal. So that's, if there's nothing else to highlight, which there is, that has been a huge success story.
And one of the other interesting aspects of that, and I'll get you a second, Clay, is the, I have friends who are still controllers at Atlanta Center and Washington Center, and they love it. And they wouldn't use the words, we were overly cautious before, but they're willing to tighten up a little bit now because they trust the reliability of the aircraft coming out of Charlotte.
And that's exactly why you'll see Atlanta aircraft being more in the automatic mode, which means the center gets the time back specifically. Well, that doesn't look good. There's a lot of red on that timeline. So that's why these times will just turn around and come back. Atlanta Center doesn't even know these airplanes have been scheduled since they're in automatic mode. They just showed up on the timeline just like they were some other departure off of Fort Worth or someplace else. They trust it that well.
Now, Clay, you were going to ask something.
Yeah, go back to something Mike said. You mentioned, I think I understood it, that you'll regret losing the RTC as part of the ATD-2 component. And so I'm wondering, is there, as we evolve into TFDM, is there some sense that we'll lose some of the efficiencies if the controllers don't have access to an RTC-like environment? And if that is the case, I'm wondering if the industry development tools via an LOA, if we could give the access back to the tower.
So I don't know if that's plans in any way, and certainly that's something for the future. I do know that we use, some airlines provide Aerobond into the tower as a tool to show the availability of gates. So it's not unheard of for them to share a tool. I mean, there's certain rules and requirements. They can't share an FAA line. It has to be an independent line that comes into the tower and not occupy certain space. But it could be done. I mean, just as a broader thought process, somebody brought up in the Surface CDM team and FET meeting about the next concept of operations. And I honestly think this is probably the time when everybody younger than me should get really motivated into what's the next steps and stages, what are the things that we missed, how can the 3 Ts integrate better. But I think that that's maybe the time for us to start talking about this thing. That'd be from Mike. I would assume that he would say so.
I'll lose that situational awareness that I have, not only in the tower, but also in the TRACON.
I think it all comes down to cost, to be honest with you. I mean, I think the FAA would have loved to have provided a tool for everybody, but the truth is I don't think they could have done the program and paid for it.
And then not only just the efficiency, but now all of a sudden, all that stuff that we showed you that goes right to the ramp, now it may come through, they may get it through, Bernie may get through to swim and things like that, but Mike doesn't know if he has it, right? things like that.
Marcus?
Yeah, just one thing. The only thing you'll be missing when marketing your credits is the picture. The data that's behind it, through the data exchange for yourselves, through the data that the FAA has in-house, should be there. So if you want to maintain that situational awareness between everybody, that data, so if you can provide the data through TSMS and TFDM, we can get that picture. And we can understand what gate A doesn't work out. We won't have a picture of where it is, which is going to be an issue. We can't get away from that. We'll have, more than that. We can check the whole movement. And the de-icing, all of these crucial data elements that, so we can see into the black box.
And Marcus is an engineer that works with us, so very valid points.
There's,
Yeah, I actually was very pleased with some of the, I thought we would come in today and we would only talk about surface metering in the different groups. And I was really excited and happy about how much talk was about data, the transparency of data, and TTP and TFCS. So if I took anything away from today and I was just coming in, I would try to become an expert on TTP and TFCS to understand the data and what you're going to need to do when you build tools.
And if you're interested in that, tomorrow morning in this room, TMI in the NAS Part 2, Brian Phipps will be here, and he'll be talking about a lot of that TTP and things like that, how we've been able to get things through and how things are coming out at the front end and the back end of things. There's one question from the online here. Is pilot ready time same as earliest off-block time?
No, I don't think so.
No. It's the earliest off-block time is the one that, of course, we're asking all the airlines and GA and all to submit and provide. And I can't tell you how important it is to be accurate with them and to talk to your friends, families, and fellow pilots and airlines and get them to participate in it. Because if I'll give you an example, if they have bad times, let's say this is another airline group out here and they didn't provide EOBTs or not good ones, and now all of a sudden somewhere along the line they end up hopping down here, they would push these times back, and now these pre-scheduled aircraft time would have to be rescheduled. And vice versa, if these EOBTs aren't good and they end up coming off the gateway later, then you're going to have to reschedule. And think about that. So you would really want to talk to everybody and everybody provide good EOBTs, because you're only helping each other and yourselves out. Because in this overhead stream going to Atlanta, who it is, I'm here to tell you that these aircraft have grabbed a slot in the overhead flow to Atlanta. So now earlier in, who's not pre-scheduling early right now, maybe the Greensboros of the world or the Raleighs of the world can't get that time that you just took out there. And now if you cannot end up meeting that time and have to say, couldn't make it, give me a new time, I'm here to tell you that nobody's going back to Greensboro and Raleigh and giving them the better time again. Nobody's going to notice that because they're busy APREC and all these other destinations. So you want to be right.
I think you hit on it perfect though earlier when you were in parking metering and pilot made call early. It was a metric that we kind of, when these planes are taking more delay than they really need to be, when it really wasn't a delay, the pilot was calling earlier than this really what they had scheduled for the EOBT. So it takes that, he calls 5, full airplane, that closed up, he says, I'm ready to go. Well, here's the parking metering, he calls for it, they add that 5 minutes up to what they say their EOBT, and then whatever the departure metering. So if you had like 3 minutes that you gave to me, with departure metering, is departure metering time, the total would be 8. All of a sudden, it's running the numbers, you have to go back and look. That's what back and look, people and say, well, we got to call early. You're going to want to do that sometimes, and that's why you have an EOBT, because it's your earliest off-block time. If something comes up and somebody else can't make their earliest off-block time, then it will drop to you. So that's just the basic concept of operating.
And to end that last point about the pilot ready time, the pilot ready time, I'm almost positive, is calculated when the pilot actually does call in and that ramp controller pushes back or clicks the aircraft on hold, and then that's what we calculate as a pilot ready time.
And not to go down a rabbit hole, but one of the topics that was brought up earlier was D0 value. We spent some time trying to socialize that idea. It's definitely going to be a policy and culture change for all of the airlines. Like me, who works with CSITs, and myself, did not necessarily want to investigate it, but we did. But what we discovered is the DOT BTS does not track airline D0 values. It is not done. It's only done D0 by airport, and D0 is just considered a metric for on-time arrival, A0, A14. So it's not an FAA or D0 restriction stopping you for changing your rules, although I know large culture has been set up around D0, but it's going to be some big changes, reference that, if you want to get the benefits out of surface metering.
And we have one last question we can make it to from the online here. It's, is an APREC a requested change to an edict? An APREC, an APREC is an approval request. Another name for that is call for release. It's just basically when the center looks at the flow of traffic and says, hey, I need all my towers underneath me to call because I have 15 or 20 miles in trailer provide at LaGuardia or whatever destination. So I've got seven airports under me that have a LaGuardia, so I want them to call so I can schedule them into my overhead flow. So think of APREC as what used to be called maybe call for release. APREC is just an acronym for approval request, call for approval request for a time.
Yeah, with a collaborative site implementation team, one of the things we discovered is we're going to have to do we're all going to be speaking the same language here, so we're going to do an ATC 101 class. I heard you made an amazing video. We might have to steal it from you. But an edict is basically airport capacity issue through the command center, and APREC is overhead stream capacity issues. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I think our time is up. Is that right, Robbie? Yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.